On June 22nd, 2013, a bright-spirited 18-year-old vanished from a house in Berea, Kentucky. In the years since, no arrests have been made, no remains have been found, and no clear answers have surfaced. Her case is cold, but far from forgotten. Who was Brookelyn Farthing? What happened the night she went missing, leaving behind a puzzling trail of clues and a family who continues to fight for justice more than a decade later? Hello, fellow fiends. Welcome to another episode of Creepy Cases in Spooky Spaces, the podcast where the world of true crime meets the paranormal. I'm your host, Cassiopeia. Join me every Tuesday as I deep dive into chilling cases that have baffled investigators and the eerie places where dark stories still linger. Today, we're exploring a case that still sends shivers down the spine of Kentucky's Madison County. The story of 18-year-old Brookelyn Farthing, who went missing one night after an end-of-the-school year party. Brookelyn Shea Farthing was born on October 29, 1994. Her hometown of Berea sits on the western edge of the Appalachian foothills, a community rich in craft, culture, and tight-knit families. Brookelyn, known as Brooke to many, was a magnetic personality. She had a spark. Friends and family describe her as vibrant, loyal, and always the first to lift someone up. She loved animals, especially horses, and spent much of her time outdoors, fishing, riding ATVs, and hanging out with her sisters, Tasha and Paige. In June of 2013, Brookelyn had just graduated from Madison Southern High School. She was at that turning point that we all hit between girlhood and adulthood, eager, uncertain, but full of dreams. She had talked about going to school for cosmetology. She wanted her own place. She wanted to build a life. She was the kind of girl who could walk into a room and immediately make 5 friends. She wasn't afraid of anything, one friend said. But within weeks of her graduation, Brookelyn would vanish, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a family torn apart. June 21st, 2013. Brookelyn and her sister Paige both took their driving tests. Brookelyn passed, but Paige did not. I kind of became a running joke for the day, a moment of, that typical sibling teasing, innocent everyday life. But that evening, Brookelyn made plans to attend a party with her cousin and some friends where she would be sleeping over. So she packed a bag and headed out to the annual end-of-the-year bonfire where all of the kids would be celebrating the start of summer. But first, Brookelyn would attend her sick grandfather's birthday. Now, while at the bonfire, her sister Paige decided to leave early, and a little later on, Brooke got into an argument with her friend because she wanted to leave with a boy instead of having their sleepover. So Brooke decided to just go home. But now she had no ride. Enter Josh Hensley, a friend of Brooke's ex-boyfriend, Jared. Now, her and Jared had been broken up for a little bit, but they were still pretty close friends, and Josh offered Brooke and a classmate of hers who had had a little too much to drink a ride home. After dropping the classmate off, Josh didn't take Brooke home. He actually took her to his house located on Dillon Court. Now, she wasn't far from her home, but the whole interaction was strange in several ways. Now, Josh explained that he was going through a divorce and that the home was in foreclosure. The house had no electricity and no water, and there were rumors of it just kind of being a party house. Now, before you question why Brooke got into a car with Josh in the first place, she kind of sort of knew him. Family and friends say that she wasn't the kind to just go off with someone she didn't trust. And like I said, he was a friend of Jared, her ex-boyfriend. Now, Brookelyn arrived at the house, and over the next several hours, things kind of become hazy because accounts differ. At one point, she reached out to Paige asking for a ride home. She said that she kind of felt uncomfortable where she was and just wanted to leave. Unfortunately, Paige wasn't able to drive home as she didn't have her driver's license. When interviewed by police, Jared told them that he had exchanged some messages with Brooke. Around 4 a.m., she messaged him saying, "Please come get me." He told her that unfortunately he was at work and he wouldn't be able to leave and come get her until he got off around 6 or 6:30. And she messaged back saying she would be fine. She was just gonna, kind of hang around and sober up. Well, then, not too long later, around 4:26 a.m., Jared received a message saying, "Can you hurry? Please hurry. I'm scared." Around 5:30 in the morning, Jared received a text message saying, "Never mind. I'm okay. I'm actually going to a party in Rock Castle City." Then she messaged Paige saying to leave the door unlocked. Now, I find that kind of odd if she was going to a party. Now, Rock Castle City is like 20 miles away, so I'm not sure who would be going to a party at 5:30 in the morning. And Jared thought it was odd, but he would just go home. Now, I do have to throw my 2 cents in here a little bit, and I'm really not trying to be judgmental. But if you're receiving these text messages, they're very erratic. They kind of conflict and contradict each other. Like the first one says she's scared, then she says that she's okay, but then she sends you another one saying that she's scared, she's uncomfortable. Why wouldn't you reach out to maybe her family or the police, or just to kind of be like, "Hey, this is what I'm getting, a little worrisome." Now at 9 a.m., Brooke doesn't show up at the car show that she had planned to attend with her friend, Matt. He calls her and he gets no answer. And this is troubling to him because Brooke was never one to miss plans without reaching out. She was also the type to tell everyone her every move. So he reaches out to her family. So then that started the plethora of people trying to reach out to her, no one getting any answers. According to Josh Hensley's later statement, he left the house during the early morning hours, around 6:30 a.m., to tend to his horses. He says Brooklyn was alone in the house when he left. When he returned around 7 a.m., the house was on fire. Brooklyn was gone. But her cowboy boots, her purse, and most of her clothes were still inside. The only item missing? Her phone. The fire had started on the couch, the very spot where Brooklyn was claimed to be last seen, and the only thing that was actually on fire and burnt. So that's a little suspicious to me. Josh claims she was smoking a cigarette, which he thinks she accidentally dropped and started the fire, and then maybe ran in worry that she was going to get in trouble. Now, remember, there was no power in the home, no electrical source to, cause a fault or anything like that, and the fire was ruled suspicious, which, I mean. Now, the search for Brooklyn began almost immediately. Police, volunteers, family, friends, and even strangers combed through thick brush, remote fields, and abandoned structures. Over 16,000 acres were searched by horses, dogs, um, they covered parts of Madison, Girard, and Jackson counties. Helicopters scanned the woods, cadaver dogs were brought in, and divers even explored local ponds and creeks. But still, no trace of Brooklyn was to be found. The search was actually called off against, they didn't want to call it off, but the area that they were getting to was kind of dangerous. There were cliffs, steep drop offs, sinkholes. The terrain was just too rough for most of, the people to keep searching. Now, Brooklyn's phone pinged one final time near Blue Lick Road. This is a rural area 30 miles from Dillon Court, but no further activity was ever detected. Also, some question, were those last text messages even sent from Brooklyn, or were they sent from someone pretending to be Brooklyn to make sure, or to make it look like everything was okay? Now, the police questioned a lot of people, as many people as they could, as many people as they could find from the bonfire, people in the neighborhood that she went missing from, and one of them was actually her Sunday school teacher, and he lived right across the street from the house that she went missing from. So she knew people in the area. Now, Josh Hensley, the last person to see Brooklyn alive, was questioned again. He's never been named a suspect, so let's get that out there. I probably should have said that at the beginning. He was never claimed a suspect. He was a person of interest, of course. He claims to have no knowledge of what happened after he left the house. But I will say this, Josh Hensley he worked road maintenance, and he had a wide knowledge of the area, including roads, back roads, the woods, everything. Now, I know that doesn't make you a suspect. I have a lot of knowledge in certain things, and that could look probably suspicious. I'm sure my search history when I do Google for these episodes looks quite suspicious. But it's just something to keep in mind. So a family member said that the fire, her stuff left behind, it doesn't add up. Somebody knows something, end quote. Now, of course, the community began to whisper about people at the party, about drug use, about human trafficking. But without hard evidence, leads kind of fizzled, as they usually do. And with time, rumors overtook facts. Now, Brooklyn's family, especially her mother, Shelby Tillery, and stepfather Randall Walker, refused to let her memory fade. They've organized searches, they've held vigils, they've set up a reward fund. In 2014, they even hosted a car show fundraiser, hoping to double the $5,000 reward to $10,000. Eventually, donations pushed it to $14,000. But of course, the emotional toll has been unimaginable. Shelby has described living in a state of suspended time, unable to move on, unable to forget. She's actually even said that it would almost be easier if they found Brooklyn dead because, what you can only imagine what's happening to her if she was taken, if she was human trafficked. But for years, Brooklyn's case has been shared online through the Find Brookelyn Farthing Facebook page and later a dedicated website. These platforms serve as both a cry for help and a community for others who have experienced similar losses. Now, let's talk theories. There are several that have been seriously considered by investigators and armchair detectives like myself. I'll admit it. Um, so, theory one is voluntary disappearance. Some suggested that Brooklyn ran away, but this theory quickly loses credibility because, first of all, she left her money, her clothes, she left her shoes behind, her boots. She had no vehicle, she had no plan, no motive. I mean, when they say that she ran away, why would she run away? She had this wonderful life. She was happy. She had a lot of friends. She had a lot going for her. Her family was super supportive. They were close knit. And even if she wanted to leave, when people leave, they don't leave all of their stuff or their money. Or even if they leave some of their stuff, there's always going to be something that's being taken. They don't just leave everything. Theory 2 would be an accidental death and cover up. Now, this one is definitely credible. Could there have been a party or something that happened at the house that went too far? Did something happen that night prompting a panic and cover up? Some believe the fire was actually intentionally set to destroy evidence. I could definitely see that being, a reason, because honestly, with just Josh and Brooke as the people there, how do we know other people didn't show up as well? We don't know who all was there. Josh can say it was just, Brooklyn was alone when he left, but we don't know that. Plus, she loved horses. Why didn't he take her with him to go see the horses? Or, did he take her and something happened? And but yeah, I just think it's very odd that the only thing that was burnt in this was where she was sitting, was the couch that she was last seen on. Theory 3, abduction or trafficking. Another one that could be credible. Now, this theory gained momentum when Brooklyn's final phone ping placed her far from the house. Now, she could have been taken. Someone could have picked her up. She could have been lured out. Human trafficking in rural areas is underreported but very real. And 12 other women, similar to Brooklyn, have gone missing in that surrounding area. So it's not a far-fetched theory. But yeah, she could have been trafficked. She decided to leave on her own and somebody picked her up. And but I also have to say that when there's no body or any kind of remains found, whether it's either you're really good at hide and seek, you found a way to, magically make somebody disappear. I know that there's a lot of talk about like certain animals that you can feed bodies to, but we won't get into that. But I feel like when there is just absolutely no trace of somebody, um, I feel like that's what happened. They were trafficked. And that's why there's absolutely no trace of them. Now, the Kentucky State Police continue to follow up on leads, but as of 2025, more than 11 years later, Brookelyn Farthing remains a missing person. Today, her face remains on posters, billboards, and websites. Her name is whispered in Berea and remembered by thousands of people who never even knew her. The reward stands at $14,000, and the Kentucky State Police tip line remains active, and her family still prays for answers. If you have any information, even if it seems small or insignificant, I mean, you could be the missing link in this chain. Like, it could be even the smallest detail. Please call 859-623-2404 or 1-800-222-5555. You can also submit tips anonymously at findbrookefarthing.com. I know a lot of people think that, oh, it's been 11 years. What if I saw something 11 years ago? You never know. It could be, you could be what gets this case solved. And if she's still out there somewhere, you could be the person who brings her home. Brookelyn Farthing is more than just a missing person. She is a daughter, a sister, and a friend. And somewhere, someone knows what happened in that house on Dillon Court. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces. If you know of a case we should cover or have information about Brooklyn's disappearance, like I said, please reach out. And if you don't want to reach out to the authorities, you can send me a message as well, and I will try to get it to the proper authorities. Actually, I will get it to the proper authorities. I will not try. But until next crime, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, never stop seeking the truth. You've been listening to Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces, the podcast where the world of true crime meets the paranormal. I'm your host, Cassiopeia. Join me every Tuesday as I deep dive into chilling cases that have baffled investigators in the eerie places where dark stories still linger. If you can't get enough of these creepy tales, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon, where you can access exclusive content, early episode releases, and bonus material that'll make you sleep with one eye open. You can also grab some Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces merchandise to keep the spookiness close, whether it's a mug for your morning coffee or a hoodie to wrap yourself in on those cold, stormy nights. If you love what you hear, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell your friends and give a rating to help with that pesky algorithm. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, keep your lights on because you never know what might be lurking in the dark.